Here he is, one half of the Rink-Wide duo with Andrew Watt, and they're back at the post-game pod business as of last night. And our Vancouver Canucks reporter, time to welcome Jeff Paterson here back to the show. Good afternoon, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Better than Brock Boeser, I suppose, which is news of the day now. And that's just, man, you feel for the guy. Had a good chat with him up in Whistler. I had the quip up about this is the year 30 goals.
Yes.
And, of course, this puts 30 in jeopardy right off the hop after couldn't even get into the first night of preseason action. Strange, we're still gathering details, obviously. He skated on Saturday with his group in Whistler and then disappeared. And all of a sudden, his team showed up for the scrimmage to end training camp, and he wasn't on right wing with Miller and Pearson, and Michael Ragouche was, and Michael Ragouche is not Brock Boeser. And so you wondered right then and there. And then Patrick Alvin met the media afterwards, and he just said precautionary reasons, and Bruce Boudreau echoed that. And I talked to Bruce postgame last night and said, will Brock be ready to skate on Tuesday? And Bruce said, we'll see. And that was just a massive red flag to me right then and there that there was probably more to the story than the team was letting on. So you just feel for Brock. Again, all that he went through last year, got the contract out of the way, was going to hit the ground running. And this doesn't rule out him still coming back and having a fine season. But hand surgery, like that's fairly serious. And they're saying 3 to 4 weeks, which would put him into the first couple of weeks of the season. And if you remember last year, tweaked something in his midsection midway through preseason and missed the first bunch of the games he started last year on the shelf as well. And unfortunately with Brock Boeser, this is part of his story. His tale in the National Hockey League is just this inability, whether it's through his own fault or not. And this one, again, we don't know what happened here. But if it required hand surgery, you have to assume that, whether it was a slash or falling awkwardly into the boards or getting hit by a puck, but something enough damage sustained that he required surgery. So, yeah, just a real setback for him and for a hockey team that, talks all about playoffs. And last week it was, hey, anything short of the playoffs will be a massive failure. They're still in this position, guys, of needing everything to fall their way, right? Like, this, even though they've got increased depth, like this is going to test it now right off the hop. So I feel for Brock. And also just looking at the schedule, I noted that game 5 of their season, the tail end of this opening road trip to start the year, is in Minnesota, which would be a game he would love to play. It's the only time they visit XL Energy Center this regular season. Yeah. So, not out of the question.
Not out of the question.
Sort of in that timeline, but it certainly doesn't sound like Brock Boeser is going to be ready for opening night.
Well, let's walk through that timeline then, Jeff. October 12th, they open at Edmonton. The 15th, the first Saturday, I was going to say Saturday night, but it's an afternoon in Philadelphia. And then Monday in Washington. That brings us to 3 weeks. You would think absolutely those are the 3 games for sure he's going to miss. Then it's Columbus on the 18th, Minnesota on the 20th. If this goes the full 4 weeks, that means he misses the home opener on the 22nd against Buffalo and likely the second game on the 24th against the Carolina Hurricanes. So fair to say between 3 and 7 regular season games, it looks like this is going to cost him.
Yeah, I mean, that's the timeline the team is putting out, but these things, it's got to sort itself out. It's got to heal. And you wonder if he's not truly close to ready and they're 3 games into that road trip, is there any point in sending him out on the road as much as he'd want to go to Minnesota? Is it better for him to skate here and rehab? And, those types of things are all going to have to be settled by the hockey club. But first and foremost, it's his body that's going to let him know when he's close. It's a hand. This is a shooter. This guy needs those hands. Those are his money makers. So let's hope that he heals up. And again, I just feel for him because it seems every year there's something with Brock Boeser, and this felt like maybe the year that he was here with a clear mind and was going to hit the ground running and look decent during the couple of sessions that I saw him up in Whistler at training camp. But now we won't see him. And I guess the other question becomes Ilya Mikheyev, who left last night's game. And again, the club didn't have any sort of update post-game. And maybe it's all these years of doing this job, but the cynic in me, when they won't give you any sort of morsel of information and they say he needs to be reevaluated and all those kinds of things, you wonder if there might be a link to this one as well.
Okay, lastly, here the Bodog poll question from me, at least. Who should replace Boeser on the right wing beside Miller and Pearson? We've gone with Mikheyev, Garland, Podkolzin, Kuzmenko as the options at Sekeres and Price on Twitter, but feel free to go off the board, Jeff. If you think it's going to be Nils Höglander, just plop him into that spot and don't disrupt the other lines. What says you, my friend?
Well, just based on what Bruce had laid out ahead of training camp, that he didn't want to experiment much, wanted to see these lines. And I thought Horvat with Garland and Podkolzin was easily the best line for the Canucks last night in the overtime loss to the Calgary Flames. Mikheyev is now a bit of a wild card just because we don't know his status. So I know that Mikheyev and Kuzmenko were put with Paterson for a reason. I do wonder if it's as simple as, hey, rewarding Höglander, came to camp, showed up in good shape, has played well. Maybe that's the carrot. You say to this guy, like, you want an opportunity, here it is. You got to show, though, that you can earn your keep over the remainder of the preseason. Nothing guaranteed here. So I do wonder if it's as simple as slotting Nils Höglander, who basically has been lining up. If there wasn't room for him in the top 9, he was sort of that 10th forward that, can think and play the offensive game. This is where the Canucks believe they've got increased depth this year. I guess we'll start to find out the next time they hit the ice.
And, this injury also puts into question, it doesn't make it impossible at all, but it does put into question their ability to get off to a fast start. They've been all reading from the hymn book here on how this team needs to start better. Well, one of their most prolific goal scorers, maybe the guy who's supposed to be their goal scorer, he's not going to be there for the first week to 2 weeks. That's only 7 games, but those 7 games can make a big difference for a team that's on the bubble.
Well, and the trickle down is, we're talking about who replaces him on the line with Miller and Pearson at 5-on-5, but Brock Boeser is part of power play 1. And I truly think that the way the power play performed, second by percentage in the National Hockey League under Bruce Boudreau for those 57 games, I think that's the neighborhood that this power play should reside. I think it can be a top 5 power play when everybody's healthy. Now, you still have Quinn Hughes running the point. You've got Miller and you've got Paterson, but Brock Boeser had become part of that group, the down low presence, scored a career high in power play goals last season. And so he's out of the mix for now. I wonder, does a guy like Kuzmenko get an opportunity right away on the first power play unit as a right shot shooter, although maybe not suited necessarily to that net front? And here's the other thing, guys, too. We talk about this all the time. If this turns out that it's going to be more than a 3 to 4 week kind of thing, if they find out that it's not healing up, we always talk about guys on PTOs elsewhere showcasing for the rest of the National Hockey League. Wouldn't it be something if Sonny Milano had been here in Vancouver on a PTO instead of across the way over in Calgary?
Yeah, that could have presented an opportunity. All right, this was the top story today all of a sudden, but there was a game for the first time ever this season last night, a preseason game, albeit, and it looked very preseason-y. You're just kind of looking for something to hold on to, right? It's a glorified intra-squad scrimmage in a lot of ways because it's a split squad as well. Not easy to watch at times, but there was enough there to grasp onto, I suppose.
Sure, and you're playing to win. These guys are competitive for most of them, outside of camp scrimmages. This is it. First time putting on a uniform against somebody that's not in your own organization. So you want to win. And certainly when you're the home team, you dress a better lineup. I do think that, and results don't matter. There weren't 2 points up for grabs. What I didn't like from a Canuck perspective was that they got outshot 45-28 and the Flames had nobody. Literally nobody in their lineup. So that was a little concerning. But, in terms of the takeaways and things that we did glean from the game, I thought Jack Rathbone thrown into a real opportunity to run a power play at the NHL level with Paterson, with Kuzmenko. So there was some skill there to work on the power play. They had 7 opportunities. There were way too many power plays across the board. 8 for Calgary, 7 for Vancouver. Preseason opener for the officials, too, and trying to set the tone and keep a lid on things. But I thought Rathbone was really good for this 26 minutes, 9 shot attempts, 3 on goal. Podkolzin was probably the best forward, scored a beautiful goal. That's got to be a confidence boost to him, taking the puck to the net the way that he did, basically stick-handled right into the Calgary goal. So I liked a lot of Podkolzin, 20 minutes plus. Remember last year we always were charting his ice time and never got close to 20 minutes, but here in the preseason you get that kind of opportunity. I thought he responded in that line with Horvat and Garland. Was very good. So there were some highlights for the Vancouver Canucks. Kept an eye on Dan DeKeyser as well on his PTO on a pairing with Tyler Myers. If he's going to make this team, it's probably as a penalty killer. And again, there was a lot of penalty killing to be done in that hockey game last night.
It seems like the youngsters, the guys that had something to prove here, have got the message this year, which is really good because that's what you want. The fact that Höglander has responded the way he has, Jim Rutherford with Dolly was, extolling Mikey DiPietro, and we saw Podkolzin last night look as good as we've ever seen him. I mean, you want these players to sort of know that there's something that needs to be done here this year, and those guys, and they all had different things to prove. But I like to see the response. I like to see guys understand what's at stake here.
Yeah, the DiPietro one I found curious. A couple of on-ice sessions in Whistler, and I know Rutherford's a goaltender, and so maybe he was looking at it through a slightly different prism, but it's hard to draw an awful lot from anything that happened in training camp. But, of course, this is a player they're trying to boost the asset value. So when I heard that, I thought maybe that was a little marketing on the part of the president of hockey operations. But you're right about Höglander. I would put Jack Rathbone in that mix as well. I thought he took a real step forward. Boy, did they give him an opportunity last night running a power play. Tyler Myers was in the lineup. He's run an NHL power play in the regular season. And yet they said, hey, kid, here's the opportunity you're looking for. You've done it in the AHL. So Rathbone played 26 minutes. I think 8 of that was on the power play, had 3 shots and 9 attempts. And I thought really put a good foot forward, especially, and this is what I do love about preseason, is you've got Rathbone playing on the left side. You had Danny DeKeyser, the veteran, on a PTO. He's here on the left side. They don't play together, but their futures are linked without question. And I think based on last night, and they're being asked to do for different things, but I thought it was a good night for Rathbone. DeKeyser, there was a lot of penalty killing time, and I guess if that's an area that he can help the hockey club, then he got a little bit of a workout there. But the coach had, lukewarm praise for DeKeyser, I thought, after the game. And the other guy, Blake, just when you talk about some of the guys that have stepped up here, the other end of that spectrum is Will Lockwood. I haven't seen an awful lot from him in camp. And then last night was on a line with DiGiuseppe and Sheldon Dries that you could see playing in the American Hockey League. And then once Mikheyev went down, that was an opportunity because Lockwood was the first guy up. He got the first chance to play on that line, to step right in with Paterson and Kuzmenko, and that didn't last long. And then Bruce just started wheeling guys through there for the remainder of the night. So if I'm handicapping guys that have stepped up, Podkolzin was terrific. I thought he was the best Canuck player last night on that line with Horvat and Garland. Takes the puck to the net on his goal. You want to see that. That should help his confidence. He was physical. I think he had 5 hits. But Will Lockwood, yes, he can skate, but we've said it, 15 NHL games on his resume, still looking for a point, and last night just wasn't a whole lot, I didn't think, to his game.
Rathbone in OT was kind of fun to watch, too. He couldn't quite get to Hughes' level, but he was trying to get to Hughes' level with that possession, so he could be an asset for sure.
Yeah, and that was a shift I certainly made note of. Unfortunately for the Canucks, Podkolzin takes the penalty, and then Calgary wins it in overtime. But Rathbone, as we said, he was busy. He even mentioned after the game a couple of times he's got to recognize at this level that when the opportunity to shoot the puck and get a shot on net presents itself, he's got to take it. And he did have 9 attempts, as we mentioned, but there were still a couple others where he was looking to make that pass, and just things happen too quickly, even in the NHL preseason. If you're in a prime shooting position, put the puck on net, either you score, you force the goalie to make a save, maybe there's some loose change lying around for somebody to swoop in and knock home. So, Rathbone, I really enjoyed dealing with Jack Rathbone. We've said it so many times, a Harvard guy. He's a smart guy. He's sharp, insightful with the way that he broke down the game, I thought, post-game. And I put the question to him. I said, after last year, are you here with an NHL mindset? In your mind, are you a National Hockey Leaguer? And, he looked at me. I don't know if he took offense to the question, but he, without a doubt, he said, why are you here if you don't think that you belong? So he's a confident guy. And I thought last night was a really, a guy put in a position to succeed. And I thought, for the most part, he took advantage of that opportunity.
Well, I was going to ask you, Jeff, what do you think the stakes are here for Jack Rathbone? Do you think there's a chance that he could open in the top 4 with Hughes on the right side on opening night? Is it solely a gambit for the third pair? And of course, unless I'm mistaken, he doesn't require waivers.
Right.
And sometimes the guys who don't require waivers are easy to store down on the farm for opening night and call up at a later date. So what do you think the challenge at hand is here for Rathbone? How much upside do you think he has through this preseason?
My sense is with the sheer number of defensemen that have NHL games on their resume, the Canucks will start the season with 8 defensemen. They probably carry 2 extra defensemen and 1 extra forward. If that's the case, I think Jack Rathbone is one of their top 8. Now, there are moving parts here. As you said, Quinn Hughes on the right side. Is that a short-term experiment? Is that something that they're going to open the season with? Is that something that's going to get nixed here in the preseason? Dan DeKeyser, I think, has to do more at this point. After 1 game, he's not getting a contract, but there will be more preseason action for him. And then you have to sort of figure out, Travis Dermott, where does he fall in all of this? He's been paired with Tucker Poolman. I think Dermott's in their top 6, and so if Dermott's in the top 6, then by extension, I think that probably means that Tucker Poolman is as well, where Rathbone and Schenn skated together through camp. They played together last night, and so, who's the third pairing, who's the fourth pairing there? But a lot of that will depend, I suppose, on DeKeyser, and if he earns a contract, if not, then guys get bumped up that left side depth chart a little bit. So lots of moving parts here. I think there is a fair bit at stake. There's also a real distinction to be made, and that is between making the 23-man roster and being in the opening night lineup. I think Jack Rathbone, with the one-way contract, you're right, there are cap gymnastics at play that could see him start the year in Abbotsford, but I think that would be a short-term thing until they get the cap all settled because of the waiver requirements or lack thereof. But they've given him the one-way contract. I think that was a vote of confidence and a show of confidence to him. They asked him to come to camp. He talked about how much video he's reviewed over the offseason of his own game and others on the defensive side of the puck. And, he was put into a position last night, certainly to play in a top 4 role, and I thought played pretty well.
Kuzmenko, Rutherford's at an adjustment period. Of course, it is a different ice sheet than what he is accustomed to. I've been told he's a very good East-West player, but North-South is something he's going to have to learn in the National Hockey League. Rutherford telling Ricky Dhaliwal he tried to do too much last night and the shifts were too long. Correctable stuff. And what did you think of Kuzmenko in his debut?
Yeah, the guy can shoot the puck. That was evident at Whistler. And again, last night, in fact, in his first shift, was set up by Elias Paterson. His shot pops just a little bit differently. And when people get a chance to see him in person, most of these guys can shoot the puck at this level. But there seems to be something a little bit extra with this guy. And so had a great first shift, drew a penalty. And that was sort of a theme of the night. Calgary ended up with 8 power plays and the Canucks had 7. So there was, in my mind, too much special teams. But sometimes, again, if it's all part of the evaluation, coaches don't mind that early in the preseason to put some guys in some spots. He played on the power play. It was obviously a makeshift first unit because guys like Miller and Boeser and Hughes weren't playing. So got lots of power play time. He doesn't kill penalties. And I think that's important. Like I pointed out on Rinkwide last night, and I've seen others picking up. Among all Canuck forwards, he had the longest average shift time at 59 seconds. So you see that and you kind of cringe and you think, maybe he's trying to extend shifts and, you don't want to get caught out there in the NHL defending at the end of a long shift. But context matters here because he's on the first unit power play. So those shifts are generally going to be a little bit longer. He doesn't kill penalties where guys are 20, 25 seconds and get off the ice, and that brings the average shift length down. And for comparison's sake, Elias Pettersson was at 58 seconds for his average shift last night. So it wasn't like Kuzmenko was at a minute and a half and others were, all under a minute. So overall, there were flashes. I think what concerns me, and this is going to be the ongoing part of that work in progress, is the underlying numbers weren't great. Again, against really marginal NHL competition. And he was on that line with Paterson and Mikheyev for the first period and a couple of shifts in the second. You would like to see these guys control the run of the play and spend most of their shifts in the offensive zone, as he learns this game. So he's going to have to learn to defend. He's going to have to be better with the puck or without the puck. It didn't help that Mikheyev left, and then all of a sudden it was sort of this revolving door of wingers on the other side. There were moments for him, but I've seen people report, and I can report with my own eyes, that in Whistler, after a number of the drills, skates hard, but hunched over, trying to get his wind and catch his breath a little bit. And it's, you can prepare for an NHL training camp, but he's never gone through it. And so maybe he thought that he was here in peak physical conditioning and is learning that there's still some work to be done there. So, I don't think this is a massive concern, but it's going to be something to monitor as the preseason rolls along and into the regular season. But just want to put that context there about all the power play shifts, I think that's going to bump your average shift length up just a little bit.
I was blown away when I saw those underlying numbers because the Bo Horvat line was just dominant. You know, they had the puck the entire time. And I had to double check those underlying numbers because they were so bad. But it was just, again, there was a little bit of a reason with no third winger or no third forward on that line for much of the night. But yeah, we'll see how that progresses throughout the rest of it. And hey, he's got the commitment. Like, he got here early enough. You know, let's hope he learns from the experience of last night, and that's what you want to see over the course of the preseason, right? Is guys figuring this thing out. He's going to be there on opening night. He's going to get that assignment. You just hope that he's figured it out over the next couple of weeks, and it's also time to get his win too. I mean, there is time to get into
exactly. I mean, these are all the hurdles that you have to go through. He came over. He had summer skates at 8 rinks. Then you go to training camp, and now the regulars are there. And some of these guys that were in Penticton, you know, they've got a couple of games under their belt, and they bring the pace up. And now you get into the preseason, and guys are battling for jobs. So, you know, I think there's going to be hurdles along the way, as there are for any rookie, whether you're an 18-year-old or a 26-year-old. You know, it was fine. As we said, 3 shots on goal on 4 attempts. When he has the puck on his stick, he's going to do some special things. But there are 2 ends of the ice. And, you know, the fans may be dazzled by the offensive stuff. You know, the coaching staff. And, in fact, I thought it was really interesting, just reading between the lines, somebody asked Bruce post-game, what did you think of Kuzmenko? And when the coach says, well, he can shoot the puck, you know, that to me is it's saying something, but it's also not
one tool in the toolbox. I like the one tool, but the toolbox not so much right now. The good thing for Kuzmenko, you know, Boudreau's coached so many Russians, and there is a transition with the style of game and the details of the game from the KHL to here. I'm sure he's going to be more patient than the standard guy will be in the NHL of how to manipulate those guys. So we'll see how it all develops. Matt?
Yeah, and you said it right off the top. 40,000-foot view. You know, it's all we have to go on, but you also just have to reserve judgment. It's one preseason game, and you know, it's just not fair to this guy to be picking apart all the things that he didn't do. Hopefully, he's a quick study and he learns. And you know, we'll see. Because I thought it was funny too. Bruce said I need to see him after 5 or 6 preseason games. So I do wonder if the plan then is, you know, to play him and play him a lot here in exhibition action.
Yeah.
Lastly, two things. The Bodog poll question: who do you think will lead him in assists? It was Miller at 67 and Hughes at 60 last year that led the way. You can vote for Paterson, Garland, or go off the board if you want. Who do you think will be the assist leader on this Canucks team this season?
Yeah, when I saw that question posted, I thought to myself, like, how much upward mobility is there truly for Quinn Hughes? Because he dazzles. We know that. He's going to run the power play. I think the component parts are there for this to be a top 5 power play in the National Hockey League. So I think the getting's going to be good for a lot of these guys. But I went and looked. In the last decade, there's been one 70-assist defenseman in the National Hockey League, and that was Roman Josi.
Really?
It was Roman Josi last season. So Hughes at 60, I don't know how, you know.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean, sure, he can get a few more. But if he's getting into the 70s, like, that is rarefied air here in the last decade, certainly. So the question is, I would expect Quinn Hughes to be in that ballpark again. You know, can JT Miller hold up his end of the bargain for a second straight season? Is Elias Pettersson going to close the gap? Because when you look at the statistics, you're right. It was Miller at 67, Hughes at 60, and then just this massive fall off the cliff. Pettersson was third, I think, wasn't he, in assists at 34 or something? It was, you know, it was really a 2-horse race. So I think Pettersson closes the gap there. I'll say Quinn Hughes, though. When all is said and done, I just think he's going to rack up the power play apples. You know, my hunch is that JT Miller takes a little bit of a step back. And so I will answer Quinn Hughes to today's poll question.
Yeah, it was 36 for Paterson. And Hughes did say, you know, playing the right side allows him to shoot the puck a little cleaner. Who knows? Maybe trades from assists for goals this year. But I'm with you. I picked Hughes as well. Okay, Rinkwide's back with postgame. Just let him know, Jeff, what you got coming up this week with Andrew and as a new season of Rinkwide has launched here.
Yeah, got back into the swing of things. So we are started after every preseason game here. We will have a postgame. It was nice to have a 4 o'clock start so that we were able to get back, and it was posted by 9 o'clock at a reasonable hour. So hopefully some consumed it last night. Others can take it along for the morning commute or the dog walk on the treadmill, whatever the case. But we are back post-game. We're introducing a pregame podcast that's going to be exclusive on YouTube this year, and we'll have our first one of those. We didn't do one yesterday because of the early start time, but now that we get into the rhythm and the routine of 7 o'clock starts for the most part, once we learn the lineups and whatever information we can glean from the morning skate, going to be exclusive on YouTube, and it'll be condensed, it'll be bite-sized, digestible, but we're adding a pregame component to what we deliver at Rink Wide. So we'll do that, and then on off days as well, certainly we'll continue to dive into the stories of the day when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks. So their season has started, our season has started. Excited, it was good to be back at the rink and good to be back in studio last night with our first of many post-game Rink Wide podcasts.
Marvelous stuff. Thanks for this, Jeff. We'll catch up tomorrow.